Hello, this is the Great Basin seasonal outlook from July through October. This is Basil Numerzycki. Temperatures and precipitation past 30 days as we look at some of the components that go into producing the seasonal outlook. On the left, it's been near normal to slightly cooler than normal period for the Great Basin, especially the further north you go. You can see on the left-hand side, the further north you go, the cooler it's been. Uh, Precipitation-wise, kind of a mixed bag, drier across many southern areas, but above normal, poking towards our southeast. That was with the early onset of the monsoon, which began in mid-June. We do notice that we had above normal precipitation up in western Wyoming, especially up in Yellowstone, where they had the record flooding earlier in the month of June. Also above normal precipitation continued across parts of the Snake River Plain, where they are growing a very impressive grass crop. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's look at the last 14 days from mid-June onwards, and this is where we see the percent of normal and the early onset of the monsoon. As was predicted by some of our climate specialists for the past 2 to 3 months, we've been talking about it in our seasonals. And you can see these bluish to purple colors, anywhere from 150 to 400% of normal, streaming up across the eastern third to eastern half of Utah. So that has definitely been good news. Also, another batch coming up towards the western Arizona Strip into the Vegas area, but didn't penetrate very far into Nevada. A lot of northern areas started to dry out. Looking at the past 3 months, it was overall quite dry across the south. That's what started fire season early June and late May in some areas in the south. But notice over the past 3 months, the wetness we've had a little bit of wetter than normal for a 3 month period across western Wyoming and the parts of eastern Idaho, and definitely across a large portion of the central mountains of Idaho. We were initially back earlier in the spring looking at those areas in the north as possibly going above normal from July or August onwards. Looks like this cool spring period for 3 months has kind of quelled that thought process. We'll talk about that later on. Uh, Fire activity, recent fires in the yellow, current or new fires in the red. You can see the activity picking up. A lot of this is due to lightning. Most of these are small fires. The exception was large fire here in the Dixie National Forest and also near Twin Falls, a couple of 1,000 acres in the grass. We had one there last week. So fire activity up here picking up. We mentioned the good grass crop up there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Um, and we'll look at some of the things that go into the fine fuel crops. Soil moisture, drier across all areas except across the north. Much of Idaho, especially the further west you go, and even dipping a bit into parts of far northern Nevada. Kind of a more detailed look at the soil moisture anomaly, percent of normal, and these bluish and darker blue colors. We're actually off the chart here, but definitely wetter soil moisture up here in the western central Snake River Plain, and actually curving up, a bit further east as well. So really good soil moisture that extends down to far northern portions and northwestern portions of Nevada, and that's usually conducive to growing a good grass crop. And the experimental Fuelcast, which takes soil moisture and predicted temperatures and all sorts of things, is forecasting I see these greenish to bluish colors, a greater than normal percent of fine fuel growth, especially across the western portion of the Snake River Plain, and also generally across parts of western and northwestern Nevada. The one thing holding back a rip-roaring fire season right now in the western Snake River Plain, and it's due to the moisture. It's the sagebrush. Because it's been so moist, live fuel moisture is well above normal in a lot of these locations. They're going to have to come down quite a bit, somewhere below 150 to 125, to really start becoming a part of the fire environment. And we think that'll happen. When that happens in the next 4 to 6 weeks, that's when things can get really interesting. We'll look at ERCs, and we start from south to north and across eastern Utah. You can see our plunge back down into monsoonal dormancy across all of our eastern PSAs. The gray line is normal. This is the 90th percentile. These are records. And western Wyoming, we talked about them. We were thinking they might go above normal by mid to late summer, but they spent a good portion of the spring well below normal. We made that original prediction. We were looking at these ERCs up here, but that 3 month cool, wet period really put a damper on that. And it's been warming up and drying up quite a bit. They've gone up to near normal, but still quite a ways to go to get to that 90th percentile where we would consider maybe above normal. So that is reflected in our outlooks. Look at our current 10-hour fuel moistures, 100-hour fuels, 1,000-hour fuels. 1,000 hours still dry here in the south, but they've moistened up quite a bit with the monsoon, but still dry. Some of the higher terrain areas of southern Nevada. The evaporative demand drought index is the 1 week drought index and just moistened up everywhere. We can see that through here. So no immediate concerns right now. The long-term overall drought does show some of the exceptional drought areas over here across central Utah. The prognosis is for drought conditions to continue in many areas, except in the far southern portions of Utah, some improvement in the offing with the robust monsoon continuing in those areas. So we look at the fuels and what has gone on in the past. What happens from here is what the weather and climate will do. So we look at some of the El Nino, La Nina parameters. Currently, we are coming out of a borderline moderate La Nina and conditions. These are a plot of over a dozen models. We usually take the mean, these heavier lines, and it looks like we'll be either neutral or in a weak La Nina phase for much of the remainder of the year and fire season. So that has some implications on the monsoonal activity, which is a little bit more robust. We start with the 8 to 14-day outlook. So basically into the first 2 weeks of July, you can see a warmer than normal signal through here, and more importantly, a drier than normal signal. Looks like that active monsoon pattern will get suppressed a bit further to the south. So areas should dry out. We'll see which areas remain dormant, which areas get more active. The total outlook for July is for the monsoon to reestablish itself a little bit, at least across eastern or southeastern portions of the Great Basin, but remaining fairly dry the further north and west you go. The 3-month outlook, again, warmer than normal and a pretty strong, drier than normal signal for central and northern areas. So we'll have to watch and see how things dry out here and whether some of the forested areas of western Wyoming and eastern Idaho can return to the normal predictions we had a couple of months ago of above normal activity. Right now, it's not looking likely, but if this pattern holds, who knows? Our predictive services climate specialists also look at temperature and precipitation chances each of the next 4 months and continue with that robust monsoon, more in southern areas in July and maybe lingering into August. If that happens, it'll pretty much keep our eastern and southern areas out of a really critical type of fire activity. But otherwise, drier conditions up north could pose a problem. So we put all these pieces together. And for July, we've removed our above normal outlook we had initially for parts of northern Utah. They've moistened up. They'll dry out. We'll probably get some large fire activity, but probably not above July normals. Where we are concerned a bit is here in northwest Nevada. The northern part of this area has a pretty decent grass crop, and their live fuel moisture is starting to dry out quite a bit. Even a better grass crop up here, like we talked about in southern Idaho in the Snake River Plain, but their sagebrush moisture is still way too high. So not for July, but for August, and probably towards the latter half or latter third of July, things really picking up, I think, across central and western Utah in the lower elevations. I think the higher elevations may stay more on the normal side, but we may start, normal means we start picking up some fires in the forests of central Idaho. But I think the focus continues in the valleys of southwest Idaho into far northern, northwest Nevada as we go through August. September, we start to taper that off. We think we still could have a concern across the Sierra front. Typically, the longer nights in September reduce the chances of fine fuel carried large fires. And then no real clear signal for October at this point. Well, this concludes our outlook, and we'll have the hard copy posted on our website as well. Have a great day and have a great month.